Morning, Bill.
Oh, I said good morning, Allison.
It's like delay on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's just the slide.
That did a weird echo.
I'm not moving.
Weird, that it's like it's.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go? We're ready to go. Second, before we start, I just want to mention that this is the first meeting that we've had since Brad Biblical passed away. And I just wanted us all to acknowledge Brad's contribution to both the Firehall committee and all of the work to do with the Firehall and bringing it forward 20 odd years. And also the work that Brian gave to the Emergency Management Committee. And I have a document here which I admit is actually Aaron's very nice, what shall I call it?
Articulation.
An article in the Undercurrent that was a sort of a dedication to Brian. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things, because I guess I met Brian here, first on the Firehall committee, and then through that a number of years, and then also the Emergency Management Committee, with you, Alan, and most of the folks around here. Always valued Brian's wisdom, his knowledge of what had gone on in the municipality, and all of the backstory associated with all of the items that we were coming up in the meeting. And as a newbie, I was certainly always eager to seek out Brian's opinion and listen to what Brian was going to tell us about a certain subject before I jumped in and be able to fool myself. And Brian certainly gave us that leadership for 20 odd years through both the fire department and the emergency management committee, and I'm sure other things he did on the island for all of us. I just want to mention that it's very sad to hear that, and I know we all listen, and but we remember his contribution as we go forward. So thank you, Aaron, thank you for that. So this is the first meeting we've had for a long time. Frankly, I can't remember what the minutes of the meeting were last time, but we could you have a look at the agenda, maybe approve the agenda first before we get into the meeting? Are there any comments?
Suella? I'd like to, okay, we haven't seen each other for a while. I'm just wondering if I could add a few words in here about the library. Just their cool.
At the cooling center?
Yeah, library schooling center. And Tom Garber.
We do, we talk about library and the extreme heat response. Is that the same thing or specific to what?
8.1.
8.1.
Gosh, I've got the wrong agenda. The agenda has changed. Okay, my apologies.
Is there there's one down there? Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
This is the note. This is
Thank you.
So we can include that in the extreme heat response.
you want to do any other point to keep up?
Now that I'm looking at the yeah, this other agenda.
Based on the old agenda.
Nope, I think we can cover that under other.
It's an ambitious agenda, but we have not met in a while, so.
Yeah.
You want to try to encourage that. So let's burn ahead. Item number 2. Sorry, number 1, recommendation of emergency program objectives. Approve the agenda for the July 27th. Meeting this 22.
I can move.
Have a recommendation to move it. Second, Christie. All in favor? The adoption of the minutes at the last meeting, which was September 27th, 2021. That was a Zoom meeting. I haven't looked at those for a while, but Would anybody like to move the adoption of those minutes?
Yeah, I think that's all of them.
Second? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any corrections? No? All in favor? So we.
All those in favor?
Thank you. Keep reminding me to look up there. Do not let me forget. Okay. So we have no public signed in, Stephanie, so we have no comment. Third remarks, I just made those remarks earlier on at the beginning, which is what I was something here at the end of Stephanie. Let's move on to item number 5, which is a review of the action items from the previous meeting. Christie, would you like to go through that, or what was the intention?
We can review the list.
Do you have the list there?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I forgot to put that on.
Yeah, I can do it. Confessions for confessions time.
Number 1, continue to investigate the feasibility of Mission Hill for emergency capital. For emergency
Right, yeah, I can speak to that, or we're talking about it in item.
Yeah, so in an item, don't speak to it, and if it is not an item, please give a brief.
It's agenda item 6.3.
Yeah, so we'll hold.
Okay, and number 2, update information regarding Rhode Island on the Fire Smart Home Partners Program website. Ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing. We had to get our CWRP taken care of first. That was number 1 on the
This
list.
CWR.
The Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan.
Thank you.
And so that is underway, and then we can take steps towards becoming a fire smart.
Excuse me, but I'm acronomically challenged.
There's so many in the acronym world.
Chris, before Christie, did you add some kiosk locations to the phone map?
That's
Okay.
great.
What's this one?
That is the
That's
agenda.
your action list. Oh, perfect. Why don't I read it out loud for the public?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so boom map, what we're trying to do is add an actual layer for emergency names, like all things emergency on boom map. So we were looking for, we need to secure a little bit of funding for that. It's not going to be super expensive, but it was supposed to come out of the website budget for last year, but they were tight last year. So we're just looking at ways that we can possibly get it added with another layer, like washrooms, for example, or once we get a water fountain in, stuff like that.
Evacuation.
Pardon me?
Evacuation corridors. Or you keep that for separate.
Big,
Never mind.
but
Never mind. I hear you. You were talking about the
in
baby.
the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just for the NERC kiosk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So that is ongoing, again, discussions with Sarah, with the GIS mapping and stuff like that.
And then was there an undercurrent article?
Oh, yeah, that's been done.
That's done. Excellent. And then these are past actions, maybe just checking in.
Yes, I do have Tess doing the adoption and authorship of the EOC action report.
Perfect.
She was the author, so.
Okay.
Of the winter.
The EOC, Emergency Operations Center after action report.
After action.
Yeah, that was for COVID.
For COVID. Okay, thank you.
That was completed though.
It's completed. They just wanted her name basically on the front.
Oh,
The authorship wasn't noted on the.
oh, right. Yeah, and if I may, that was extremely well done, very thorough.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Where would I find that? I was gonna look at it.
Oh, I don't think it's posted publicly.
Yeah.
It's quite a
I would access that.
quite a comprehensive, detailed
Yeah,
report.
it's way more operational. I'm just wondering if it was posted publicly, where would it be? That's all. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, if I needed that last word.
Anyway, I'm sure you're reading it carefully and taking all the appropriate action.
There are a lot of recommendations, and we actually have enacted some of them. But there's always room for improvement. So.
Of course.
Was the date added to? Yes. Excellent. That would be on the report and publications.
Yeah.
There's that's previous.
Sorry, on which page?
Reports and publication. Where is that? Is we go to.
Oh, sorry,
My government,
sort of.
and then in the center committees and bylaws, policies, reports, and public. Parks land.
Great. Okay, I know, I can find it individually, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can send you a link.
Oh, that's fine.
Incorporating public education into phase 2 of evacuating planning, including a one-pager for each neighborhood identifying specific evacuation routes.
No, but we did send out an evacuation brochure last year in 2021 at some point. We did a mail out with evacuation information on it.
Good.
That's on.
But just not neighborhood specific. That would be probably complicated and expensive. Right now.
Is that on the website?
Yeah, everything's on the website.
Type in emergency in the search and I'll pop up.
So how does the neighborhoods, the individuals know where the evacuation place is if it's not identified on that
Oh, no, it's-
brochure or in a map?
It is identified. It was identified, you know, the whole island was addressed in that brochure. It's just, we didn't specifically do individual brochures for each neighborhood
Oh, okay.
pertaining to their particular evacuation plan.
So then each neighborhood is supposed to know where their evacuation point is.
Yeah, and it was all in that general brochure. So it's all in there, it's mapped out, and then there's also blurbs, exactly where the muster point is, where the egress point is. It's all available to them.
Christie,
Yeah,
was that brochure done as distributed as a mail drop?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it might be worthwhile for some of the communities where they don't, they're part-time residents, so they don't have a mailbox. To actually, you know, maybe have a few available to be distributed in those communities for somebody, or the NERP in those communities to distribute them. You know, half our people don't have mailboxes.
I think that's an interesting idea for the summer season. That you might want to at least put a little, ask Sophie to put a little note in the undercurrent saying, we have a new, have you seen our evacuation brochure?
We can do a reminder to people.
Yeah.
It's readily available online
Yeah.
and or popping into the uni and picking up an actual paper. You know,
Because it's a good point that a lot of people don't have mailboxes and some people have no junk mail. You know, they don't get community mail.
right.
Well, mail drop doesn't go to everybody. And so a reminder might be a good idea.
I think the post office distributes municipal stuff regardless of whether they have no junk mail.
I'm just thinking, Alison, that the point you bring up is a very good point because, Brett, if I could mention Good Point as an example. We do have a NERP there, but I don't know what the, it's Montgomery, as you probably know. But we haven't had anybody on the board recently, not on the board any longer at Good Point, but it's something that hasn't come up to any of the, any distribution to our members. And as you said, Councillor Fast, they are part-time, so a good part and a good number of them don't have mailboxes, and those that have them don't really answer, don't really open them. I'm guilty of that very often. We get it towards the end of the year. So we need to think of some way that we can get that message out to those people. But there are probably other examples throughout the island of people that.
Well, they're all on the NERP kiosks. So if you walk to a NERP kiosk, you can look at the evacuation plan.
I don't think we have a NERP kiosk.
Well, there's one on,
Is it by the mailboxes?
yeah,
Good point.
no,
So a lot of these groups have community association meetings. So
Yeah.
it might be useful to just identify those and just give those people a supply, the chairs of those meetings, a supply to hand out, which would be relatively easy to find.
yeah, I
Like,
think Gary did that with his neighborhood. Like
yeah, we
around-
did that at South Bowen last
They
year.
had sort of like a community or neighborhood association meeting, and then they spoke to the evacuation plan. And he actually asked me to speak, but I had another work engagement, so you know, I'd be happy to go out there and speak to people. But you know, to a certain extent, people also need to be responsible for looking this stuff up and keeping themselves educated and informed on you know, how they're gonna get off the island.
You're gonna have to see the
Well, we got shot down by the Belfast County committee. We asked for an ESS and NERC table, and I got back, the response was, that's a hard no. Which I was like, hard. Yeah, I was a little bit, okay.
Let's move on. Let's think about how we can improve that.
Needs improvement.
I think it does need improvement. So it needs a tweaking. It's not getting through properly to some of the part-time and summer residents, I think. So I think it's, let's just carry it forward and see if we can do anything.
I would agree with you, Chair. I think if you were to ask, and I'm not going to ask, if people know where their egress points are, most people do. So I think it's a really good point that we need to increase the awareness.
Yeah, I think it's worth it.
We can maybe send out or do, I can get Janet to do some pushes on.
You send it to me, for example, I can get it distributed to your email system. So you can put all of it with the email. And there are probably other associations on the island, as you say.
Yeah.
If you can just get an email to somebody and say, hey, look, this is where the evacuation plan is, it's dark, there's no wall, etc. Do you know where you are? Yeah. Anyway. That's just one.
A motion, or you're just gonna do your work as you do.
I'd be happy to leave it as it is.
And you guys
It
direct,
already
you're the only
is.
committee that directs. staff.
Action list and carry on.
You're the only committee that actually directs staff. So you can just direct her.
And it's already on the action list, so.
Yeah.
I'm getting on the action list.
And just as an aside, we did have a NERC training day that we put on, NERC ESS training day at Firehall 2 just recently, June 11th. We did speak about evacuation. We had a tabletop exercise. Those people were informed and educated about the processes. So
They're already.
these are the, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think this will work itself out.
yeah.
Look.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
are you going through the list there, Steph?
yeah, I think we're getting to kind of old ones, but these are now actionable resolutions, one regarding the fire bylaw, so let's just.
Yeah, so fire bylaw is in staff review. Currently, it's been, yeah, it's been written and being reviewed by staff.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm not going to go into what that is right now.
And it was that old
That
dot matrix document.
would take a whole meeting. So
Yeah.
I'll just bypass that one quickly.
And then Liam was gonna follow up on costs.
Oh, I did not call that because I only have anecdotal report from our previous public works supervisor, Bob Robinson, that the cost is prohibitive to.
I can tell you what Paul and I had a conversation about this. Paul Gaudet, the superintendent of public works currently. And so we spoke about Bishop Hill. I mean, it's drivable in a 4x4. You're not going to get any like emergency vehicles probably out there. Anyway, the swales that are in the road are there for a reason. They were put there on purpose so that the gravel runoff when it rained, it didn't, come all the way down. Yeah, to prevent washout. So anyway, Paul said the only way that we can actually mitigate that problem is through paving, which is hard because of the grade of the hill and also would be difficult to maintain in winter. So those are sort of like, and the cost. So 3 sort of prohibitive issues that we're looking at when it comes to paving Bishop Hill. And then of course, probably not a popular loop for the neighborhood either.
Well, it would remain closed, like, so we would still keep it locked, a gated road, but the cost of paving is prohibitive. And so what is the real benefit of having it?
Yeah.
So from a prioritization point of view, it's actually lower on our list of priorities when we're thinking about roads and other needs. So if this committee were to think that it should be bumped up in terms of a priority, then we could advance that to council. my personal recommendation is that it can still serve as an emergency access, it's just very limited. And so I don't know that we're in a position to spend that money on that.
Are you in agreement with what?
Yeah, and especially because it is usable right now for a lot of purposes that I can see as fire department at least using it for. So it's not like it's a completely closed road that we can't use. It is something that we can and have used.
Right, let's leave it like that. What was your recommendation? I think that's a good idea.
But just procedurally, it has been to council, so this is a report back on a council resolution. So maybe.
Can I ask you guys to speak up?
Sure,
Allison, seriously, asking me to be louder.
Yeah, you just said something and I didn't.
Was a council resolution. This is direction from council that council direct public works staff to report back with the cost estimate improvements.
Oh,
So
okay,
I think we
great.
should just do a report back, we mean you, some kind of report back of some kind. Just
Right,
for
right.
process of,
Close the loop.
yeah. So public works staff, you're gonna be designate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
Allison?
the road regularly graded just to get rid of the worst ruts?
No.
So it's never had, it doesn't, I mean, we've driven up it. In
Yeah,
the
same.
emergencies in the BMW, which is fairly low and there wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
But again, we had neighbors who also had four-wheel drives that had trouble getting up there. So Elms offered to give driving lessons.
I think it would be okay if every now and again, the fire department had a quick, look at it, just to see if it doesn't need any upgrading or anything, or grading or whatever.
Yep.
And from now and every now and again, just make sure you use that. I think that would be good enough.
Well, the problem is the swales.
Yeah.
And those are purposefully put there. So,
Part of the design.
yeah, exactly. So it's not like, oh, let's go fill in the swale and get it more. You know, I can't do that unless there's just big potholes at the other end.
Okay,
I think it would be helpful to have a brief report, even just saying what you said in this meeting. Because, and laying out the reasons of the swales, because this issue comes up again and again and again over 20 years or so. And there's never anything to point to, because there hasn't been a written report. So just something to think.
you can do it better, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's put it to bed. Put some action items and ongoing maintenance of monitoring, et cetera. Okay. Stephanie, anything else? On your list?
Ongoing then updates regarding that action report, we covered that. Fire smart principles are constantly being encouraged, that just was covered off in the community center project, so that's great. And Councillor Morris, how are we going with the official
I've
community?
actually done the OCP part and started through the land use bylaw. My handwritten, my notes are in the other room. The other section I was going to look at was the design guidelines, since they're in the, looking
Okay,
at those right now. Because I think those are more the issue.
okay. Which guidelines?
The design guidelines for Snug Cove? Yeah,
Thank you.
but I think if we adopt the fire smart principles and illustrate how they work.
Thank you, Alison. Christie, items like what, AED, what did we get to?
Yeah, update on the AED programs. We've got 26 AEDs around the island. That was another thing we're gonna have to look up. Emergency there is the AED locations. Our volunteer, Louise Howard, who did a fantastic job, shout out. She had to step down in December, and so Amanda.
Yeah.
Hopefully on, has stepped up to the plate to manage that program for us. And we've been talking, we're trying to find ways to manage it more easily. So right now we're inputting all the data into a software program rather than just like a Google document. And that's going to help. And then eventually we're going to try and find some money down the line we can actually get a piece of hardware to attach to the AED itself, which just keeps track of everything, including where the AED is, how many times it's being used, if it's being used, if it needs new parts, if it's going to expire, if it's too cold, if it's too hot, all those things. So that would be fantastic. They're really expensive as it is right now. It's a fairly new technology, so they're a bit pricey. But Amanda and I are trying to, I've tasked her with finding AED champions in the community that might be willing to fundraise or something like that to help out that program.
Councillor Bass.
Is Amanda a volunteer or contract?
She's a volunteer.
Volunteer, great.
Okay, if I remember correctly from the last meeting we had, we got to the point where we had no money to do maintenance on these things. And we were going to go back and try and find money for maintenance. And that arose because we looked at installing 2 or 3 new ones on the island. And we said at that last meeting, we're not going to go install any more new ones until we can figure out how to continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have we? got
Yeah,
that?
so so the Rotary has, they're done their project, so they won't be providing any more housing for the AEDs. So that's it, like as it stands right now, it's gonna be 26 AEDs unless a particular neighborhood wants to get together and do it sort of their own accord. Right now, excuse me, the maintenance is coming out of Aaron's budget for the pads and stuff like that. The AEDs themselves, I believe, have a 5-year shelf life.
It's longer than that, I'll,
Is it?
for that.
We'll have to check. But that is going to be the major problem. And I think what it's going to boil down to again is approaching the neighborhood associations, because that they initially purchased the AEDs. So it would make sense that the neighborhood associations would then raise money to try and replace that neighborhood AED as well.
So do we then, I guess we have some responsibility for in this. I don't know what our responsibility as a municipality is, but how do we make sure that these neighborhood associations are, how do we make sure the AEDs are going to be workable when somebody wants to use them?
Well, that's what Amanda's doing. She's the one that manages them.
wanted-
And so, yeah, we know we are always looking at the AEDs and making sure that they're,
So we can assume they're all okay. And do we need any, so the money we're talking about is to get money to fix them or replace them or whatever?
yeah. So I can't remember if it's 5 or 10 years, but it's somewhere, it's max 10 years. It's last.
So is this spreadsheet that Amanda's developing going to list the date they were installed and the estimated date they're going to have to be replaced?
Yeah, we have all of that information. Yes.
And how many AEDs do we have?
26.
26.
And when is, they were all installed 5 years ago or earlier?
No, they're all over the place with different expiration dates. So we'll have to
Yeah,
deal
but I
with
mean,
them one
Do
by
we
one.
have any coming up soon that are going to need to be replaced in the next year or two?
I don't think so.
Okay, and then what's the annual budget for looking after these things?
I don't have that right in front of me, but I do have it in my budget. That there's it's in there, I just don't have that in front of me.
Yeah.
The life expectancy is 8 years.
Okay.
This Google said 10 to 15.
It depends on the make and model.
Yeah, I looked up the model that we're using this year.
So in summary there, we'll assume that there's a program going on with the volunteers. Aaron's got money in the budget to supplement the maintenance.
Yep.
And somebody picking up the fact that they're going to be there when we need them.
Yep.
So then, I think that's a good close, isn't it?
Check mark.
Good, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. The Naloxone program, Steve.
Okay, so I hesitate to call this a program because it's not really a program. It's just sort of, I don't know, helping out the community, like them taking an active, proactive stance against the poison drug supply that is out there and could be very well be here quite easily. So basically, we've just been trying to do education about naloxone and then handing out naloxone kits to the businesses in the cove And just in case there's an overdose down in the Cove, we talked about putting them into the AED housings. But we were hesitant to put, and I talked to Vancouver Coastal Health about all of this. We were hesitant to put needles into, you know, just public areas and what kind of liability that would, you know, so we've just decided against those. The nasal naloxone, which would be the alternative that we could possibly put into the AED housings, are quite expensive. I think they're about $160 a pop. So
has naloxone been needed, or is there a shortage, or is there a call for naloxone kits?
yeah, oh yeah, the pharmacy is giving out naloxone kits all the time. Good. And we don't hear about it necessarily.
Yeah,
These people are, you know, people are doing drugs in their own home. And yeah.
So can we assume then that the paramedics and maybe the fire department folks have kits and training going? So you're
Yeah, we have kids in the training in
you're
the department.
Well, that's terrific.
David staff is trained, all the rec staff.
And we're actually offering staff through rec, or offering training to public through rec in the fall.
good.
Christie and Kumar, who's the emergency paramedic or the community paramedic, is going to be doing training.
Excellent. So I think we've done what we're supposed to be doing here.
That's great. More than I thought.
Bishop said we okay.
Discuss above.
Item 7, updates, Christie, what we just done in the last few weeks, and you grant there.
Yeah.
Give us an update of what pipeline.
Yeah, you guys read the. So do you want me to go through it?
I think what we should say is questions for the coordinator.
Yes. Yeah.
Some questions. This was a comprehensive report. Thanks for doing this.
Well, it's not so much of the question as just want to share my appreciation for the work effort and securing the grants and for staying on top of that, because it's all of these grants are extremely helpful. They're relative to the community center, they're small dollar, but they go an incredibly long way.
Yeah.
So I really.
Yeah, and especially if you can get them year over year, they start to accumulate.
Christian, just for the record, what I'd like you to do is read out the headline of each one of these things and the amount of money. I just want people who watch this video in the future might want to know what you've done. That didn't get this report, but for example,
Just read out, okay,
so they have a record of what
So-
people know what you've been doing.
completed grants, we did the 2020 UBCM EOC capacity building grant. And that involved training and some other things. Anyway, we got that money, 23,000.
Maybe list mention how much money you got.
Yes.
So we got $23,876.99. We secured $3,000 in grant funding from the JIBC Community Public Safety Grant to host a 2-day. It's going to be the Incident Command System course for the emergency personnel and volunteers on Island. 2021 EOC Capacity Building Repeater Project. So that's our Mount Gardner Repeater Project. We've been granted $25,000 for that. 2020 UBCM ESS grant. We are emergency support services grant. Thank you. And we've been granted, and I'm just putting the final report in now, it's $25,000 for that. 2021 UBCM CRI Fire Smart grant, which was $50,000, I think, in total.
Community
Resiliency Initiative.
Thank you.
So, so that was $25,000 towards the community wildfire resiliency plan, and then another $25,000 towards Fire Smart public education and activities. And then this year, we secured $25,000 in grant funding from UBCM to increase emergency support services capacity. So with that, just high level, we're trying to have an east side and a west side emergency support services hub, if you want to call it. So it'll be Firehall 2 and the main Firehall, and we'll have all of our group lodging supplies and reception center supplies both places,
Oh, great.
just in case the main thoroughfare is shut down.
This is wonderful to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
Another $25,000 from UBCM to increase EOC capacity through the purchase of furnishings and equipment. So that's for the new Firehall equipment and furnishings. And then we got another $50,000 through UBCM Community Resilience Initiative, Fire Smart funding, and for Fire Smart activities and public education. Where's that from? Oh, and we did apply for $100,000 in grant funding through Intact Financial Group. That was a private insurer, and unfortunately, we weren't picked. I think they had a ton of applicants from all over Canada.
Yeah.
But
A quick summary. So since the start of 2020, it's over $200,000 in grant funding for emergency service program.
That's incredible.
Excellent.
That's really good.
Can I say that since I came on to council only 2 terms ago, 2014, I guess, we came in and there was the volunteer fire department, of course, doing all the things that they do, but otherwise, it was lacking. And there was a number of people in the community who were talking to me during my first election campaign. What's the community? What are you doing about? Anyway, now we're at the point where we're funding through your grant, the grants that you're getting. We're actually funding a robust program, and that's perfect as we come into more of these climate change events. And we've got more people on the island who are either new or part-time or staying in short-term vacation rentals or whatever. They're not as the neighborhood tightness is not there, or the connectivity might not. And anyway, so I just think this is like a landmark. And thank you very much for all your work. And we're at a new era. We are entering a new
and
era.
thank you, Jennifer McGowan, for establishing all of this.
Well, if I may, Chair, the follow on that, like Jen McGowan did set a great foundation for us to build on, and you know, I do want to also say that the fire department, the volunteers do an incredible amount of work, and beyond their capacity to do this kind of work. And so this is just a really excellent complementary work to already strong crew. So
Fabulous.
I think you've said it all. And I totally agree with everything you said. It's been building up to this point, and we're really nice. You've got something that up you like. Executive retirement.
No.
So keep going. Evacuation plan. Is there anything new on that?
No, the evacuation plan is fairly new. It was planning either was published. So, yeah.
So I think the bullets were sort of before the report was. So understand, I think it says red.
oh,
For
Evacuation plan was adopted by council September 14, 2020. So, fairly recent. In COVID territory.
I'm already at that. It's fine. Is there anything on the UOC tender construction that we need to know?
I can quick update that. And we're like, construction is nearly complete now. We're actually hoping to have the building move-in ready by mid-August. There's been a few delays, but getting very close. Looking at a ribbon cutting late August, and then an actual grand opening September 10th. Yeah,
It's very exciting.
it is very exciting, yeah, we're,
And the EOC element of it is really fantastic. So it's a really great space in there.
Yeah.
I think maybe the next meeting, perhaps, Chair, we could consider meeting there.
Good idea.
great
Good
idea.
idea.
If it's not full of furniture for the community center.
I just, when you say move in mid-August, I gather it would take a while for you to become completely operational down there? Or is that your actual?
Yeah.
will be full operation by mid-August?
We're hoping, yeah, because operationally, we can't be working out of two places, so we'll pick a day and we're gonna just sort of move everything that we need to be operational. And then over a longer period of time, we'll be moving some of the
Extra.
the extra things, yeah, but yeah.
The
we're hoping to be-
karaoke machine.
yeah, hoping to be operational though, mid-August.
Oh, fabulous.
Yep.
It's like no one will have a
And I
fire for 4 hours.
Can you tell us a little bit about can you remind us a little bit about the EOC portion of the facility and what's there? Yeah,
Yeah, well, we have there's a large EOC / training room, so it's just a big open space where we can get together if there is an event. We've got multiple screens, computers, computer terminals, the areas in there where we can basically run a large emergency operations center.
great,
We're yeah, well prepared for anything. Like that.
super. I'm just delighted because I did take a tour years ago. UBCM something was in Squamish. Anyway, I had a look at theirs, and that must be like 5 years ago or something. That's like, okay, now I see what an emergency operations center is or can be. And there was a wall stacked with supplies and all that kind of thing. And yeah, I like the idea of meeting there if it's ready.
Yeah.
When it's ready, I will.
Forward to that. Game notes. Alison, do you have any questions? Okay. EPC Staff Report dated June 22. Then
That's kind of what we've been going
Yeah.
through.
so let's move on. I think that the item 7.2 on the waste disposal plan for Metro Vancouver. That was something that we were working on earlier. For your plan.
Yeah.
And the question there was the disposal site and where it was going to be, the property being. This, we're talking about disposal of debris following fire or an earthquake. And Metro Vancouver had a joint committee with all the municipalities. They brought forward a plan. And the part for Bowen Island was to have, again, it was part of a park, maybe it was somewhere, I won't mention an area because I'd get it wrong.
Right.
That I looked at it again, but we were looking at a certain area that for disposal of the old trees and roots and stuff that was going to be left over from emergency. And we were trying to check out the area that was available. This is during dinner time. And I think we left it hanging a little bit. And I just want to make sure we do close that loop. I don't think there's any feedback to Metro Vancouver required, but I think it was all entirely to ourselves. So I don't expect any update on this today, but I just wanted to bring it forward. Unless anybody has anything to add.
This is new to me, this topic, but it's great that you've already been thinking about that's excellent pre-planning. You know, so currently what we do with excessive waste that we don't have anywhere to put, we have 2 sites. One is a crown lease near the Hiker Trail road, and there's a site that we can dispose of organic material there. There's not a lot of room there. It's difficult to get to. You really do need 4x4 heavy machinery to get there. And also more accessible is the Salal yard at Veterans Field, Veterans Park in Mid-Island, which is at the end of Salal Road.
Okay.
And that site, same sort of thing, from an operational perspective, there's not a lot of room to put things, to keep things operational, but in a disaster type event, you could easily pile stuff there if necessary.
So do we have to have specific sites identified, or can we just have a sort of a plan in place that we would utilize either parks or police ground land or like whatever, you know, depending on the needs of that particular circumstance?
What I think we could do, but I suggest is we go back, we'll go back to the Metro Vancouver plan.
Yeah.
See what the area was and see what the size of the area was, because as I recall, it was quite large. They had calculated based on a lot of basic assumptions. Go back to that plan, look at it, and then compare it to what we have today and the spots that you mentioned, Liam. Figure out what we would be comfortable and need to do ourselves.
Do you know with are you able to call up that plan? Like, I'm not aware of this plan that you.
Oh, you heard that? Right? No.
Alison, do you know?
Alison, do you remember this Metro Vancouver waste disposal plan that we're talking about?
I have no recollection of it at all. I think if it was something that was brought up at Metro board, we need to ask David Hawking.
Solid waste man.
I mean, I could go back
I try
to,
to find you. I'm happy to find you.
right, I could go back to the general manager at Metro Van and ask him. But
I think that's a good idea, because so many of these plans are being upgraded now as the province is changing its emergency response plans because of the flooding and the, you know, the landslides and all these other events. And so I think it'd be a good idea to also see if there's new recommendations or anything. Rather than going back.
is it the joint municipal regional disaster debris management operational plan?
So many words.
Okay, okay, I found it, so I'll look in.
And maybe bring Public Works into that.
Yeah.
Did you just find it on Metro's website, Liam? Because I was just about to look.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. That's
Somebody made a comment about, do we need to identify it in advance? And yes, I think we do, because, and maybe we need, you know, more than one area, given if it was an earthquake, areas might not be accessible. So, I mean, planning in advance and being prepared is part of the issue. So yes, I think we need to identify different sites, and it may depend on what you think the debris might be. There's a big difference between fallen trees and you know, waste from fallen houses.
Yeah, there were homes involved, you know, even, yeah. The demolition.
well, there can be lots of hazardous waste in this. That can-
Yeah.
Think of it.
Yeah.
Done.
Like I'm thinking about the just the big storm back in whenever that big storm that was a few years ago in the winter, there were propane tanks bobbing around in the sea, washing up onto rocky shorelines and into marinas. Anyway, so there could be all kinds of waste.
Let's figure that, and let's consider the hazardous aspect of it. Probably something new that, I don't know if Metro really covered that in their report, then, but why don't you just have a look at it through your staff and figure out where we are and what we need to do to be up to speed on that.
Yeah, I will. It doesn't seem to identify anything for public.
And you made, Jennifer may have some reports on file to do with that, because
Liam, if you want to send me that link, I can have a look.
we dealt with it quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, new business. How we doing for time, first of all?
Sorry, so is there an action there? Just maybe Christie, Leo, Public Works looking into that, coming up with some response for you
Yeah.
guys.
Leo, is there something you want me to do on that?
Oh, yeah, so we'll look at the report, just make sure that we're, from what I can tell, we're not identified at all in there, other than the previous CAO's contact information. And then circle back with Patrick to talk about, okay, well, let's confirm where we would prefer to cite these things. And then engage with Metro to say, this is what we're thinking. Does it align with any policies or regulations? Like, are there anything else that we need to be concerned about?
And there is, deep in the report somewhere, there's a calculation of the area needed
Right?
for Bowen Island.
Oh, okay.
And even to the point where there may even be location. Yeah,
Right.
somewhere in there, and I don't know where it is, but there's something with a bit more detail in there than maybe first glance.
Right.
To get. Anyway.
That definitely wasn't in the HRVA,
No.
not a polling center publication. It really was,
It's a standalone thing.
okay.
Anyway. Heat response.
Heat response. IRG, initial response. Yeah, so I last year drafted up this extreme heat initial response guideline. I don't know if you all had a chance to go through it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and it's all sort of like following Environment Canada and Vancouver Coastal Health guidelines as far as, you know, a warning versus an alert. What we had in the heat zone yesterday or last year would have been considered an alert. They don't come through very often. Heat warnings are much more common. We'll probably have one next week. There's all we do with heat warnings is just, you know, ramp up public education around what you can do to keep yourself cool. Heat alerts are a different animal, extreme heat alert. And that's when we start talking about opening up cooling centers. And so this is where we can talk about the library. Seems like a complicated plan, but it's actually fairly simple. We just keep track of the temperature. Environment Canada is the one that actually tells us if there's a heat alert, which would then prompt cooling centers, the opening of cooling centers, which in our circumstances, the library annex at this time. And the Jennifer Struckman is well aware of the policy and protocol that we've decided to put in place around that. So, and basically it's just a matter of opening the doors, finding somebody to man it, and providing water for people. And what's nice about heat is that it's typically more of a daytime problem. So, you know, it's much easier to find somebody to go hang out at the cooling center because we can close it at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever, as opposed to warming centers, which are, you know, nighttime is a problem.
My apologies, I had read this story back before our previous meeting that was canceled, so
Yeah, it's not fresh.
I just wanted to report that the library board met last night. And they had also, it's a monthly meeting, so at the previous meeting, we heard that the library had received a one-time grant funding to do with COVID, and as many libraries, as all the libraries I gather in BC, but I can't remember the details because it was a month ago now. But last night we heard that the plans were still in place to add cooling to the rest of the library as well. So that would be adding 2 more heat pumps / cool pumps, so that there would be a bigger cool space. So you can be in touch with Jennifer about that. She leaves at the end of September and Tina comes back.
Yeah,
So, but she's the one putting the plans in place. So,
well, and I was wondering whether or not when the community center is built, if that would become the primary center.
We haven't made a determination of that, but it can easily do that.
Yeah.
it will have that capability.
It'll have that capability, as will the fire hall helpful, like, so
Yeah.
we're going to have all these added assets and resources available for these types of things, so.
So they'll all have heat pump / cool pump?
Yep.
Great. That's good to know. I think just for us as a committee that, the heat dome event, which was so new last year. Suddenly we've got the one asset at the library and we've got the new ones coming on board. That's great.
In relation to this, like, once these new facilities are up and running and we better understand how they operate, then we will want to reconnect this group as well with the ESS folks to determine, like, okay, well, like, where are the best facilities to then house people in emergency events or set up these types of structures. And now we have more resources at our disposal, so we'll have to.
And just as an aside, EMPC, as a result of the heat dome, has put in new legislation that they will cover the costs associated with opening a cooling center. So if we had to staff it, or if we had to buy water, or like whatever we have to do, EMPC does cover a good portion of those costs, which is new.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Good info.
Thank you. Just a question, is there a separate ESS group operating somewhere? Remember initially, Reagan used to be part of this committee and she looked after ESS. And then after Reagan,
Caroline.
oh, wait,
Caroline McDonald.
Caroline before Reagan?
No, Carolyn's right now.
Yeah.
She's after Reagan.
Reading maybe participate.
Reagan was part of, Reagan came to these meetings.
Yeah.
But Caroline doesn't.
No,
I think Reagan was just part of the committee. I don't think she came in an ESSD capacity.
Well, she was part of an ESS.
yeah,
Just help me understand the structure of what we have now, because
I think we've got Christie now.
I know with Christie.
Yeah.
So, well, Carolyn sort of, would report to me so I can answer any ESS questions you have.
I guess I'm not understanding things correctly. My misunderstanding of what we had previously. I didn't understand that. Because we used to be at the meetings, we discussed the ESS issues. But now that I guess this is, you're representing what Caroline or Reagan would have done in the past.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want Carolyn here specifically to directly ask questions.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just trying to understand where that fitted in.
This year in your capacities.
Maybe we need a little org chart and a 1 paragraph description of what each group does.
Well, I have that in the report. I have that in my report. I've got everything that NERC's doing and everything that ESS is doing right now.
Yeah, but I guess, I'm just saying, just a very simple, this group is responsible for this, this group is responsible for this. They interrelate this way.
That would be,
I
I
think
would find
Bill-
that really helpful too, to have it. I'm a very visual, tactile learner, and having it in that type of a organizational chart format of like, okay, here's the Emergency Executive Program Committee, here's ESS, here's the NERCs, here's all these different groups, and how do they actually interact? That would be helpful for me for sure.
Yeah, because there's some confusion with volunteer fire department too, because you used to do everything.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, to your point, how do we make sure that the ESS is informed of information that's coming out of this group and vice versa?
Yeah.
And I think Christie is our conduit for that.
So the org chart would show the ESS coordinator as reporting to Christie.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just think, because I think Bill's just trying to figure out how we get, how we know what ESS is doing and how ESS,
Yeah, well, ESS is a program directly underneath the emergency program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, yeah.
and the EPEC is legislated by the legislation, but how do they interact?
Yes, something that would help me understand it better.
Yeah.
And
A little chart.
On the website.
okay, Happy with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, Janet, you-
Thank you. I guess we covered item A.
Oh, no, do we need a recommendation for council to adopt or approve the,
Right, the IRB.
draft extreme heat initial response guideline? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation.
I move that the, that our committee,
It's written there.
thank you, I'm just making sure about the acronym.
Oh,
Going with the reading, perfect. Recommend that council approve the 2022,
well, it says.
Well, it was written in 2021.
okay,
We can see them.
2022 extreme heat initial response guide as presented.
Not amended.
Yeah, I'm just not saying it. At the July 2022 EPEC meeting.
Can I ask a question with respect to the guide? I'm just strolling through it, and I apologize that I haven't really read it. I'm on, I don't know, it's page 8. I guess it's page 8 of the guide. It's talking about a toolkit and function leads, contact list. Are these BIM, the cell phone numbers that are put in there, are these BIM provided cell phones? Or are these everybody's personal cell phone numbers, in which case, because this looks like it's going to be a public document.
She's thinking about privacy for personal cell phone numbers on page 8 of the guide.
Yeah, it's 3.1 function leads contact list.
Are those the municipal cell phones? Do we know?
I guess I'm just thinking, if these are cell phone numbers that aren't published anywhere else, and somebody's annoyed about something, all of a sudden they're going to start getting a bunch of phone calls.
That's a good point. Like maybe we should.
Tax that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just, who's supposed to be contacting these function leads?
Like, for example, Adam, I don't know if the general public has Adam's.
Yeah, I don't want my cell phone number just.
Yeah.
No. And Jennifer's gonna be gone.
That's my work cell phone, but it's not,
Still not.
I don't even really want my direct line out there.
Just don't have email and not phone.
Email, like, we'll redact that portion of the publication.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the purpose of the cell phone numbers and the purpose of the contact list is for,
Staff.
It's more an internal.
It is.
Yeah, thank you, Allison, for catching this, but yeah, we don't, it's not that we're trying to be secretive from the public, but we don't want the public just, randomly like, oh, now I've got Aaron's cell phone, I can call Aaron at any point.
so what I would do, so you didn't have a redaction, is,
Yeah,
I mean,
we
it's
just
not
take
gonna
that column out.
remove that column entirely.
Yeah,
Is there any sort of a number that anybody should call?
there's the main line, and yeah, I think that this is just a contact list, there should be a,
I mean, there's an emergency after hours public works number that's in the phone book, but,
What would
that's,
anybody be calling, anybody reading this document would want to call the hall? Just in
Well,
general?
this is
for staff.
Yeah, this is for staff, like it's not really anything that would involve the public.
It is now, because it's in this agenda that's on.
well, yeah, but how many public are gonna look at the agenda?
yeah, so it is, I mean, we should pull that, for anything public facing, we pull that column out, but additional to what this report does, we should have some public facing, like in an extreme heat event, this is what you do. And here's the number you call. And it's not Aaron's cell phone or my cell phone.
Well, they can just call the BIM number, like the general.
Sure, but we need to produce that. Yeah, like a little one page or little like thing.
There's a bunch of stuff at the back, all the resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we need to pull that out, we need to isolate it into a simple, this is what the public does, so like if if I'm wondering like, oh, what do I do? Like, I am overwhelmed with this heat.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do?
Well, you should call 911.
Well, I need to be told that. And that's what we're gonna get. So we need, with that, that needs to be part of the.
Yeah, so for heat emergencies, personal heat emergency, call 911.
Yeah.
But for information on cooling centers, call.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
so
so-
like a little, just a little card that's like, here's what you do.
So this recommendation has, with the following amendments.
Yeah.
With the following amendments. Redact, staff contact information. And add a public. Facing,
Sort of like the water emergency response plans in a way, right? I mean, this has been mandated by the province.
Public
No,
facing.
it's not mandated by the province.
Well, I'm looking at the one point that says the trigger 1.5. As a medical health officer requests that Bowen Island municipality implement the extreme and heat initial response guideline. So
Sorry, I think it's in here.
Sorry. Could you say that again? What page are you on?
1.5.
1.5, is that a page?
Page 4 of 14,
Thank you.
if you're online, or, yeah, it is page 4 of the document. Trigger.
I'm not looking at the full PDF document. I'm using agenda notes.
Under trigger,
Yeah.
medical health officer requests that Bowen Island municipality implement the Bowen Island extreme. Initial response. Well, that's just Vancouver Coastal Health doing the general heat alert.
And they're a quasi provincial entity.
Yeah.
So.
So do we have an answer there or? So,
I have another one when you're ready.
I just want to suggest also there's an opportunity maybe in this first page and second page to kind of messaging to do with media inquiries, etc. Keep public listening is based on that bottom half of that page, you can write something if you wanted to. There,
Right.
just the right
Little box.
little box at the very beginning.
Yeah. Contact 911. You know, but this is like, yeah.
No, very good. Page 2. Yeah.
I have another one. Page 11. I'm wondering if you, it lists schooling locations, Bowen Island Library, Bowen Island Community Center upon completion. It doesn't, that's where I was surprised by it. It didn't have the, can we add the new Firehall / EOC upon completion?
Yeah, I mean, so this is awesome. So long as we're thinking about this as internal, an internal document.
Yeah.
That's as operationally appropriate. So.
Yeah,
And what we
however you want to phrase it there, but I just think for staff, like, let's say staff 6 years from now.
Yeah.
Suddenly they have to refer to this and it's a whole different crew and.
Yeah.
I just want to say, oh, I didn't know that building had that capability.
Exactly.
That's all.
So I think we want to be able to identify the facility and, you know, and maybe, yeah, what resources are available there. And because the Firehall, for example, is not a cooling center that we would use regularly. It would be an extreme event. And so I could see the library being the go-to place for like the majority of the time, then the community center, then the Firehall.
Right. So these are all to be determined, but thinking about some of these plans.
Yeah.
Can last 10, 12, even year longer.
Yeah.
So just since we know that, let's put it in there. So it's future staff. I mean, and sometimes it's in an emergency, everybody's on holiday, right? So,
Yeah.
So, but I guess really
Page 11.
you're trying to identify public buildings that people would already go to for cooling areas, right? And the fire hall is not a general public walk-in, use that training center building.
No, these are just potential cooling centers that the municipality could utilize. It's
Okay,
not
well, maybe
sort of like
we
an
can-
open invitation to the public to just roll into the fire hall and.
Could you insert the word potential in front of C cooling locations?
Or
Potential.
maybe we need to just clarify that this is an internal document for
Yeah.
staff guidelines, not, you know,
Yeah.
it's not a
So
public-
this isn't gonna get posted on the website.
Well, yeah, I know, but that's why I'm saying maybe clarify
Yeah.
somewhere at the beginning of the report that it's staff guidelines.
Let's do that.
I think that's a good idea.
Very good.
Because,
One,
speaking as a former newly elected person who came in and was trying to get oriented really quickly to everything and reading the beginning of all the plans, and, you know, I think that a few lines about that would be really helpful.
even put right on the cover.
Yeah,
And have like,
internal use,
Non-staff guidelines.
internal use.
Internal use, I think,
so we have this recommendation.
as amended,
As a minute,
yes, I need a seconder.
yeah, get a seconder. I agree with it. The administrator. Chief Administrative Officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, yeah. Did you vote for that?
Yes, I did, yeah. Yeah, actually, I seconded them.
Wildfire season.
Wildfire season, possibly gonna be later this year. Environment Canada called for wet June and July, which we got. They weren't sure what was happening in August, but it looks like things are heating up a little bit, so they might have a later, longer wildfire season. Blackwell and Company are currently working on our brand new community wildfire resiliency program or plan. Thank you. And
All now resiliency, not protection.
it's changed from protection, yeah.
Okay.
And it's anticipated to be finished by, I think it was end of November, Aaron,
Yes, although I think they indicated that they were ahead of November.
so latest end of November.
What's it called again? Then community
Wildfire resiliency plan. This one is just a link to the current one that we have, which it was from 2007.
Yeah.
So that's why it says protection plan. Yeah, the 2022 will be a resiliency plan.
expected in November.
Yeah.
Um,
And paid for by grandsons.
are they sort of feeding you any sort of hints at what they might want to say that you can take into account for this year coming up? You know what I mean? If you have any meetings with them, you can say, is there anything you want to think that's important to us that we should know right now into the wildfire season?
Are you talking about Blackwell?
Yep. And at the meetings with.
Oh, are they saying?
Draft.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
They haven't given us a draft yet, so.
So is there going to be a draft and will we get to look at the draft before it's finalized?
Yes,
Yeah, potentially.
yeah, I believe there will be a draft. When we receive that, I'm not sure. Again, as Christie was saying, the plan is scheduled to be completed in November. So a draft.
So is that the date for receiving the draft or is that the date for the final?
That's issue final.
Okay, so sometime in the, in a month or so before that, there'd be a draft, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And we do have to approve the draft. So if you want to provide feedback, then we can make that happen.
Well, I think probably we should. I mean, I've worked with Blackwell before and I'm confident he'll have a very good document, but sometimes having the laypersons read it means it makes sense, right? Or something needs to be expanded. Yeah.
When you guys have the draft, let me know when I'll schedule.
Yeah, let's do that. I don't know if you have anything to add, what Christie?
No, just definitely been a slow start, but I think everyone should remember that we're not through the wildfire season yet, and it's going to pick up. We're in moderate fire danger right now, and I think we're going to be in high. I wouldn't be surprised sometime next week.
So Aaron, what are the rules right now? I mean, when we were driving home last night, I smelled wood smoke.
Right, so that's currently campfires. The only fires that are allowed on Bowen Island right now are campfires. And they are only allowed on private property.
So somebody, but on private property, you don't need a campfire for cooking because you've got a house and a kitchen.
So it's not for cooking, it's for enjoyment.
Yeah, campfires are a specific type of fire that you can look up through
Okay.
BC Wildfire. And they can be for anything that you
They're,
want.
they're for singing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're the fire pit for sitting around and that's what I would have been smelling then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
That's allowed.
that is allowed.
Private property.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I think.
At what stage do those not get allowed?
Extreme.
Extreme.
Those are still allowed even in high. Or if the province mandates, they can also,
They
they can say no fire anytime they want, but
So no beach fires right now?
no beach fires.
I've hit some people's decks.
Not a great idea.
The propane, yeah, the propane are actually allowed all year round again, unless,
But no beach fires, if I heard you guys correctly?
that's correct, no beach fires.
Okay, not that we've got a beach to have one on. but-
Inside the house, unfortunately, no.
No, your wood burning? No. Gas, yes.
Yes, yes. Okay. That's a metro law, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. That applies to Bowen Island?
Yes.
Clarification, good, thank you.
So before we move on from wildfire, I just want to point out that we've had, I've been working with Wilma Pretorius, who lives on island here. And she owns a company called Cranimals, and they wanted to do something to Cranimals.
Oh, yes.
And they wanted to do something to increase wildfire awareness, especially on our local hiking trails. So they've generously donated the funds to create these signs. I can pass them around to you guys.
What do they look like?
Pardon me?
I can't see.
Okay, just
I'll
one.
show you in a minute.
I can put it in front of the camera. Is everyone-
Yeah.
Can I see too? Then, yeah.
Anyway, they paid for the signs to be designed and made up, and I think she's got 18 of them made up, and they're gonna be posted.
Oh, okay, I've seen those, yeah.
Hopefully on existing signposts around hiking areas. And Ian and Aaron are gonna do some, and then Parks is gonna do some with Patrick's permission.
I have a question about having her company name on signs that are on municipal property. I thought we had a sign.
I don't even know if it's on municipal property.
Well, it'll be on Crown land largely if it's the hiking trails and I'm sure the Crown has rules about no advertising.
Where are they being posted?
Mount Gardner mainly.
I think you're gonna have to get Crown permission to do that.
Yeah, we can't post signs there without.
Has Cranimals been involved in any of our volunteer programs? Have you met her?
Yeah, she's a NERC volunteer. And then we made sure not to, we didn't put the Bowen Island insignia on there, not the municipal insignia.
The concern about putting up, partly putting up signs with somebody else's logo on them.
Decide who's.
Municipality is one thing, but also just proliferation of signs has been an issue in the past. And I wouldn't want to take away from what the volunteer fire department has done in the past. I don't know what the current thing is, but when it gets to be extreme fire danger, you post that, and locals know to look for, you would watch for those bright.
Right, orange things, yeah.
So, you know, this could confuse people or add to the proliferation of signs. Because Metro Vancouver Parks puts them up too. And I know that, I just don't wanna, if you could think about how to coordinate with the fire department, what you put up. If that could be checked.
You have one sign right here.
We typically, well, we put up, when we get into extreme, we typically put up like bright orange or pink or whatever we have sort of colored signs.
Whatever neon color.
Could that we have that at that time, yeah, we print up some absolutely no burning kind of signs. We put them up in various high vis areas around the island. We just tend to do that in extreme and then we take them back down at the end of the summer.
So the question really is, do we want this or not, or do we need it or what, or is it?
Or is it all
I don't think we can endorse it because they're gonna post it on Crown land and, I don't think people can post signs on the Crown land without Crown permission.
If it's going on municipal property, I'm not sure about their logo going on it, and we have to check.
And Crippen Park, they wouldn't be able to post it without, so.
Did this get run past Sophie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only-
Where?
Yeah, the only thing so flagged was we were originally gonna have the municipal logo and she said we can't do that, but just put the Bowen Island logo. Great. So,
Yeah, that's, sorry, but anybody not familiar with it, that could be, this would be supported.
Yeah, that logo looks very much like, yeah, when I saw it, I thought it was municipal.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
I might have an issue there.
well, for Mount Gardner, we need the provincial permission. You can't just go and,
Yeah, well, I will do that.
Let me ask a basic question. Do we think this is necessary to supplement what we're already doing?
This is,
It's a what?
It's
thinking.
finding the word, is it a volunteer
Yeah.
contribution?
it's a contribution that's been given to a bureau, you know,
It's a donation.
It's a donation and it's made from, it's coming from a place of concern for the safety and well-being of island visitors and residents. And I think it would be really nice if we could try and accommodate this.
Well, what about just posters on the ferry?
sorry, go ahead, Allison.
I was saying there's bulletin boards on the ferry. I mean, what about just posters on the ferry? I mean, I'm
The idea behind it was for specifically for tourists and specifically for smokers, to give people a visual reminder that on trails, you know, it's Tinder Drive, and if you flick your cigarette, you can start a forest fire. It's a visual reminder for people to be cognizant of fire season and living on this treat island, and you know, and it didn't cost anybody anything.
No, don't get us wrong. We're not dismissive of the general.
No, I'm saying we get the crown. I'll go and get the permission from the crown.
Okay, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. I'm not being dismissive of the volunteer and the generous contribution of this person's efforts and financial, whatever that may be. That is fantastic. But we do have to be careful about proliferation of signs, and we do need to make sure that what we're doing is in accordance with any existing policies, regulations, or bylaws. Like, so we can't, and I'm not saying that I'm against this. I just want to be careful that, you know, because what one person thinks is critical and important for the island is not necessarily what another person thinks. And I've had numerous times people come forward and say, we should be doing this, right? And we should be posting signage about this thing. And we may or may not want to do that. So I guess I'm not 100% convinced that it's something that we don't want to do. Like I like the idea of it. I think more information is better. I think if it's posted at trailheads, it's not a bad thing. You know, just I'm not aware of it. So
But I think this, and I share what you said about sensitivity, I think it's referring to protection of animals. And yet it doesn't mention anything to do with animals except the logo. And it's a picture of some deer. Is that what it's, is this?
It's got nothing to do with animals.
So it's, but when I see carnival, I think it's something to do with protecting our wild, protecting the deer and all all the wildlife, not forestry. That's not what it is?
It's just fire prevention in general.
Oh, okay.
Is it getting the message across that it wants is what Bill's asking, I think.
First I have a question, and then I think I've got a suggestion. The question is, will they be taken down at the end of the fire season?
Potentially, I guess we could do that.
Or are they going to be just laminated, or are they going to be like a metal sign?
Like a metal sign.
Oh, so they would be a permanent sign.
Yeah, well, that was the idea.
Okay. And then, thanks. Then I think my suggestion is, that, and I can make a motion if needed, but basically, that you, talk to Aaron about the extreme fire danger signage that he puts out. Maybe there's some coordination that could be happening. Or make sure that it's not going to interfere with the visual signal that comes from Aaron. Right. Extreme fire.
So, Aaron, do you typically post at the trailheads and stuff like that, or?
That is typically what we do once it becomes extreme. But this is all, like, of course, I was fully aware of this program and I saw no issues with that, clicking with what we do. But that's because these are more of a permanent, just a reminder every time you're on the trail, kind of a thing. Whereas the other ones are, they're bright and they're in your face.
Temporary.
Yeah, they're temporary.
Yeah.
And when you see those, oh yeah, it is extreme fire danger. This is more of a be safe when you're on the trails.
Okay.
With fire.
Well, then I was gonna say, I support the idea of them going up at trailhead where we have permission.
Yeah.
And that you just, work with staff to figure out the fine tuning of the logos and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know,
You want the logos on or off?
how many, but one more question, how many of them are there? Fine.
I'm not sure now. I can't remember how many she had. I'd have to look in my email.
Okay, it's just a matter of scale, like if it's 10, that's one thing, if it's 100, that's another.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
No, it's not. It would be closer to 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
What is cranimals? And when I Google cranimals, all I get is like cranberry.
That's what it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't actually. Yeah. Yeah, I think we have to be careful about that. Like, I don't think,
Well, so that's why we ran it past Sophie
yeah.
and these signs have been made up.
No, I get that.
Yeah. I mean, we could, I guess there's,
there's tape that you can.
yeah, we could, if we needed to.
Those signs are fully made.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Maybe some, well, work with the CAO.
I think we're gonna, yeah, just
We
think.
have to figure out some policy because it's a kind of advertising, it's a kind of,
Yeah.
and I think,
Yeah, it's like, I mean. Yeah.
and so if you could work, and then you can always get the tape that can patch on top.
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Perhaps trim off the sign, but that's maybe too far.
I think
Finish it up.
I can like. Pass it over to.
But what I will do going forward is I'll investigate that, yeah. And then I will also, I have a list of potential locations, and then I can go through that and see sort of what property it's on, where it is, and if it's appropriate, and if there's too much signage already, etc. We'll make sure that we're not.
Can I ask you also to coordinate with Bonnie, who's in charge of Parks and Trailhead?
Bonnie knows what to do.
Okay, good. And because at one point we had speaking as a member of the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, I believe there was a draft policy in place for words on benches, for example. And there's sort of a whole similar category where people put, in memorial to for a donation of a bench. And but does it, what are the other implications of that to the public and that kind of thing? It's not a simple issue. And so I just leave that with staff this fine.
Yeah, do you have a recommendation you want to?
I think,
Thank you.
For this particular thing, I would like to circle back with staff on it and just double check if we do have any signage policies, and I just would like to confirm that. And I'm not entirely comfortable with the corporate name on there, if it's going up on municipal property. So,
Or provincial,
pardon me?
or provincial, crown land.
Right, yeah.
So anywhere.
Well, I mean, if.
Before the
Problem.
time to post it, if you could make sure you've got approval on the chief executive officer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so I can make that a motion if you want.
sure.
Okay, I move that the executive, Emergency Program Executive Committee, EPEC, recommends that,
Direct staff. You guys direct staff.
okay,
Oh, you're direct staff.
direct staff to not post this.
Or say to review signage policy, organizational signage policies, prior to the posting.
No,
What is it?
on the approval of the chief executive officer. Only post with the approval of the
Chief
chief
administrative.
executive officer. Chief administrative officer.
Yeah,
Postpone, wildfire
Not just review.
signage, yeah, installation until approval.
On public land needs to be in there, like she's not wanting it posted on the Crippen Park trails, I hope.
That the committee directs staff to postpone wildfire signage installation on public land until approval from the CAO is in.
Wait, who seconded it? Oh, did she? Okay, thank you.
Did I see you seconded that?
No, I was just, I'm uncomfortable with the whole thing unless we know that it's, you know, if where they're wanting to go. I mean, Crippen Park's not gonna allow them to be posted. And I don't think the Crown will either.
Postpone installation until.
Thank you. Okay,
Second.
thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks.
And
This
the
is a tiny thing compared to all these big things, so please excuse us for waiting here.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah. No. Just thought it was a good, positive thing for community.
That's right.
Great.
Nobody is saying that it's not positive, it's just.
No, I didn't say that.
Thousand.
Pardon?
Item 8.3.
Oh, that's me. Just let me get back into my agenda here. Okay, so I think 8.3 and 8.5 are one and the same. So 8.5 is an update on where the province is at. The province has been planning to update their emergency management legislation for quite a while. And unfortunately, I can't open these under 8.3. There's two bullets. And one of them is just the April release that was put out by the province in a news and notices in their emergency management section. And then the other one, content of associated email dated March 2020. It won't open for me.
No, it's got a login requirement.
Got a login, so I don't know, because I originally did have the email that Chrissy did send. Anyhow, and then if you look at the 8.5, it's their update to everybody as to where they're, oh, darn it. So it modernized emergency management legislation. And so they've talked about, so I think we just need to keep on top of it. If they're asking for input, then, you know, stay in touch how to reach us. So is Christie signed up? Does she get these notices? It's on
Yeah,
the-
I'm being updated on the modernization process. I don't think there's anything to report on right now. They're still working on it.
Yeah, but are they if they're asking for input from the communities or the public, then I think we should at least have a look to see whether we want to respond or not.
Yeah, was that what the email, were they asking for?
Well, I don't know. It says stay in touch and how to reach us. Just a minute, I'm trying to.
As far as I know, they were working on modernization. They're going to be presenting sort of preliminary report or plan or whatever. And then at that point, municipalities and First Nations will be able to.
Okay, so this notice thing was a spring 2022 update. The link at 8.5. And what it says in here is what we're engaging on now. So they were asking for feedback, and our engagement with you is going to look and sound a bit different. With the collection of feedback complete, this next step will focus on informing you, and we're developing it. We also use to set the stage for regulation. So I guess I just want to make sure that if we're being asked for input, we're making a conscious decision to either provide it or not provide it.
Yeah, I did not receive a March 20, they talk about a March 23rd email.
Well, yeah, I don't know who they're going to, and yeah,
Yeah, I
and
did not-
if you're looking
did
at the 8.5 one, it does have a, what we heard report, and yeah.
So does that, what you're reading off of, Allison, does it have a date on it?
Yes, it was spring 2022 update. That's the link at 8.5.
Oh, I see.
April 13th, 2022.
Which
Yeah, I'll go back into my email and look at it.
yeah, well, I guess my question is they're talking about engaging on now.
Engaging who, sorry?
This next step will focus on informing you about the legislative framework we're developing, including co-development. It will also be used to set the stage for regulation development. So to keep key partners up to date, we'll be hosting a series of virtual presentations from March till the end of April. So did we hear about the virtual presentations, and did we attend any of them?
I think we did hear about them. Might have attended one. I don't remember. But whatever, it was either feedback and stuff like that was either collected from Jennifer and or was missed during the time where this position was open.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that we've got this legislation modernization on the radar. We're getting the information, and if they're providing sessions like webinars and stuff, that we're participating in them. Because
yes, and if it fits within my schedule and I get the invitation, which I think I have been getting the invitations, then it would be something that I would attend for sure. Okay,
and I guess the other question is members of this committee, if they were interested, should maybe circulate the, I'll sign up for the emails and see what I end up getting, but see what happens. There's a legislative info hub, which is a bad link. It doesn't work.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
No, we just say that we received this information. The action would be that any information you get out and you would circulate to the committee, any information Christie you get completed, and see if there's any action required. If there is, let us know. Otherwise, just monitor what's going on.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't remember sending any specific feedback to them or even getting a request for specific feedback. So I'm thinking maybe it was before my time that they were actually collecting the feedback.
Yeah, that was probably the earlier, but it sounds like there might have been something just recently, but I was just trying to find out what had come out and what was out there and make sure that we're on, keeping on top of it so that we can, provide input if we need to.
What we'll do is we'll make sure that Christie's on email lists, and because there was a notification sent out in March from EMBs to participate. I didn't receive anything.
To participate in the webinar.
I don't know what it was, but basically where they're at is they're looking at specific regulations that will support the modernization of the legislation itself. And those regulations are focused on the disaster assistance program, really specific things. And so, I mean, I think we can also, it's important to recognize that Christie has limited time and capacity. And so where feasible, we will participate. But in some cases, just by our very size, we have to accept what gets done and trust that other municipalities that have more capacity are at the table advocating, including Ubcm. And so we'll do our best, but we can't always be analyzing provincial legislation and regulations and providing useful critical feedback because of our capacity.
I think there's another exciting feedback on this. I think the city of Vancouver and people like that will be right on to
North Van will be all over it. They're leaders in this space.
They'll take care of us. And the government
We've got a lot of their same issues, the interface stuff, which is.
Exactly.
take care of it. They're,
Yes. Agree. That's you.
let's just keep it on the.
It's just to keep everybody, make sure we're getting the stuff and then keep us in the loop.
Yeah.
No action.
Will do.
Required. Okay. How about item 8.5? I think that we covered that.
8.4?
8.4 was. They got it, completing it for the four. Oh, sorry. I think.
Oh, EPEC membership, I think, is redundant now because we've added Ed, but I think we might still have room for one more public member. I think we can have up to 3.
Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
with the motion in with whatever goes out about fires or. Sure.
Oh, you're back to 8.3.
Do you want to open it up to just everyone?
It is open to everyone. Yeah, it's a public spot. Right now, bills are only civilian.
Can I suggest that when we're doing events to do with opening the new emergency operations center / Firehall, that might be an opportunity for somebody to say a few words, like people that, if they come to the ribbon cutting ceremony, or if there's some notice in the paper that goes out about it's opening soon and all that, that somewhere in there, I'll leave it completely up to you, but that might be the audience who would look at those might be somewhere to draw interested, experienced people from. Yeah, thank you.
Good idea.
Good.
So. At 8.5.
I think the next one was a repeat. Sorry. I'm sorry about that.
8.6.
8.5 should have been under 8.3.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
8.6.
Okay, so this is an easy update. I emailed Darren Gwinnett and I'm still waiting for a reply. Yeah, I just asked for, their actual policy on, or if they have a policy on that so that we can get ours straight. Yeah,
Good.
My experience is find a place to spend the night.
yeah. That's
their policy.
I had a discussion with Darren because I phoned him. Or asked him to phone me. And their policy is to deal with getting people to their destination, being the island. So they run the water taxi if they can and that kind of thing. But they don't have a policy to, help find people accommodation or transportation home, or, if cars are on the other side stuck, they'll provide parking access and that kind of stuff. But once they get them to Bowen, they're on their own. On the water taxi, yeah.
Well, and it's not just Bowen, it's also an issue at Horseshoe Bay. And I have my own personal experience there where we were trapped at Horseshoe Bay essentially because there was a snowstorm on the upper levels and there was people that didn't have snow tires. And then the ferries weren't running because of the weather.
So the highway was closed and the ferry was closed.
Right. So there was people there, including a single mom with her special needs child, who had were literally just stranded there in their car. The Horseshoe Bay motel was packed. There was nowhere to stay, nowhere to go. If we hadn't been there to take her with us,
I was thinking you rescued her, didn't you?
yeah, she would have been left there. Yeah. So,
She was a good customer.
no, she was in her car, but she didn't have the snow tires, and there was no way. It was like a blizzard on the upper levels. So that is where I want to know, what is BC Ferries policy? Like, is the building open even for people in that circumstance? Or, I'm just very curious as to what their policy is.
I think that's really timely that you're asking that question. And, I support that partly because there are more emergencies now with climate change, whether it's heat events or floods or whatever, cutting off roads. And then there's way more ferry delays right now due to whatever. And I think partly COVID. And the point about leaving people stranded can be at any time of the day, because sometimes there are lineups that are like 5 ferries long or some ferries.
But it's not, you're not stranded if the ferry's going to be running at some point.
Speaking, and the point is that some of those people will never get on a ferry. They'll be in line up for hours and they can't, and then they'll be stranded. So it's timely in that when now that things are changing, including the leadership at BC Ferries and that UBCM is coming, and we may hear Union of BC Municipalities meets in September, and that's a venue usually for local municipalities that across the communities across the province to speak up about emerging issues to the province and make recommendations. And so it's timely that you asked this question, and including maybe the Bowen side has been not very clear either, that you could perhaps advance that. So I'll just leave it there, but that's great that you're making that call. Okay, can you also check, are they going to do, maybe this is a question for Aaron, BC Ferries. I really appreciate that BC Ferries announces when we have extreme fire danger and they tell the passengers. Does that go into play every year? Do you know?
That's actually, I was really happy to hear that they're doing that, but that was not directed by us, so I'm not.
No, it's that was actually, we have to call, like, I have to call.
That was the Untitled Chapter.
Oh, okay.
So you did
Well,
that.
last year we did,
Yeah, I think all this things, I think it varies.
Yeah.
But you'll be, I'll just leave it.
Yeah, so
Let
let
me
me
know
wear
if
an
you check
extreme.
about
Yeah,
that.
so when it's extreme, you call.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, but it's great.
I can actually, well, hopefully Darren will get back to me and I can.
That would be great. And it's just, if you have any difficulty with that, let me know, because as a Islands Trust representative for Bowen Island, all the other islands have these kinds of issues and concerns, and sometimes we can help too. Okay, thank you.
I think that's a very important issue and scary situations. If we don't know the answers to it, the conclusion is that you're following through with the questions,
Yes,
trying to get some answers for.
Yeah.
And you heard what Councillor Class said, support of that. I think we all support the position. Try and find out what it is and if anything we need to do, we can do.
right.
Yeah. Especially now, it's a problem.
Wanted to clarify Bowen Island municipality's responsibility position when it comes to stranded travelers.
Yep, agree.
And I think a point about Horseshoe Bay side as well, because there also are.
Well, I know, but I talked to North Shore Emergency Management specifically about this question. And I said, because it's on the North Shore, like the Horseshoe Bay is not really our jurisdiction. And so, what should have happened in that scenario, but it all kind of goes back to BC Ferries and what are they going to do and who are they contacting and, what are they implementing?
Yeah.
It's a big gap there.
Yeah.
The gap needs to be.
I support you asking those questions, because it could be Bowen Island residents.
Exactly, yeah.
On the other side.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, very good. 9.1 island plan
Info
info.
in the new.
No other items we can, do we set a date for the next meeting? Definitely, or we want to-
When the draft for the Wildfire Resiliency Plan is available. So if you guys get any more information, in advance, so maybe up right during the October, November.
Can I ask a question? If you've got a second. Just before the end.
Absolutely, 5 minutes.
Okay, because my question is, at the recent council meeting, not just passed, I guess. Council passed 2 resolutions reaffirming opposition to motorized recreational vehicles on Mount Carver. And what about LNG, which is in the LNG one, marine accidents, is in the hazard and vulnerability risk assessment. But my question was that I learned some new things from people who came to speak to council. One of them was about spark arresters on recreational motorized vehicles, and whether and this was being presented as a wildfire risk, and also people camping up there and that kind of thing. And I just wondered, is this these spark arresters issue? People take them off apparently because they waste gas or something like that. Is that an issue that you're concerned about as a fire response?
Not really. I'd be, when you're talking specifically about fire arresters.
Yeah.
I would be much more concerned about what the person is doing when they get to their, if they're riding on a motorcycle on the top of my partner. I wouldn't be concerned about the riding of the motorcycle before, they get up there and then they want to have a campfire or dispose of a cigarette improperly. I don't think the riding on the trail is not something I'm concerned about so much.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered what to think about that. And then campfires, are you seeing over the years, are you seeing more campfires or fewer, or is it something?
I would say it's steady. It's pretty well normal. We're not seeing them we're seeing campfires in people's private backyards, and those are allowed and they're well contained and controlled. They usually have a garden hose there and all that. So,
right.
But as far as seeing more of them, I don't think so. I think it's steady.
Thank you. That's good.
Can I also just touch on one thing before? This was just from my staff report. I just wanted to make note that we did activate the EOC around the atmospheric river in November. And so that was, yeah, we haven't really talked about that. We did have a one-day EOC activation, and we did submit to EMBC for reimbursement of staff wages and contract services for the Eagle Cliff washout, which was like our major sort of infrastructure damage. So we're waiting to hear back, but hopefully we'll get $12,000 back from that application. I submitted that in February, and I'll keep you guys posted on what happens with that, but.
Good.
What did you say was the thing that was destroyed?
Well, Eagle Cliff almost washed out.
Eagle Cliff Road.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
We had some, I mean, even White Sails, I don't think the damage was quite as bad, but it was touch and go there for a while. White Sails, and it was definitely touch and go on Eagle Cliff. So.
Thank you for that. I forgot all about that, because that's in September.
That's the sort of thing that we are concerned about, isn't it? Where an emergency like that can cut off the flow of an area.
Yeah, it was definitely concerning at the time.
Is that in November?
Yeah.
That's a lot of the evidence. Okay.
Okay, good. So that's working.
It worked.
Yeah, I mean, that we have the EOC, we're getting more practice at it, which is not good. That's the thing, we don't want that, but that when it happens, you can have a one-day activation and we can give the $12,000 to support the coordinating that happens. Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you.
Just before we close, how is this going to work? When we have a new EOC in the Firehall, right? And I think the EOC meets here in this room, if I'm correct. Currently, this is where you meet today.
Well, the
How does it work in the future?
Well, the EOC could be stood up in any location. So I'm the director of the EOC, and so it could be technically or typically it would be in this room.
Yeah.
But now we're going to have a dedicated space at the new fire hall with a room that's larger than this room, and it'll have more technology and support dedicated to an emergency event. And so if we do have an event requiring the EOC to be stood up, it will likely be stood up at the new fire hall.
Okay.
It's possible it could still be stood up at the municipal hall, because in an event, depending on the type of event, the EOC plays a very different role than the boots on the ground. so you want the EOC to have direct access to the ability to make decisions, to task resources, to like secure those resources, to like, basically be the coordination of the event. And so sometimes that might be better placed right at the hall, because you've got a lot of the directors of the EOC are directors of departments. So, Hope Dallas from Corporate Services, and Patrick from Public Works, Daniel from Planning, Sophie, Christie, and so they're all at the hall. To relocate them down to the fire hall may or may not be the best decision, depending on the event. If it's a really significant event with large magnitude, then we're likely, we're all going to go down there, because that's going. Everything else stops.
You have the ability from here to communicate properly with the EOC over there.
Yes, and so long as the internet stays viable, then we have tremendous flexibility. Like you could have people being remoting into the EOC, and so we have all sorts of tools that are disposable now for remote communications. If internet is down, and so like let's say power's down, if it's a catastrophic event where we've lost power, we've lost internet, and we're relying on things like VHF or other, or literally like word of mouth, then we are going to be at the fire hall. Everybody's going to muster there. The municipal hall has backup power.
It has a new.
Yeah, we currently have it. Yeah, and the new one will have it.
Good. Excellent. Good. Let's see. Ain't too much?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's one of those things where you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Right? One of my good friends is responsible for all the marine spill from the Pacific Navy fleet, and like his job is basically just prepare. Oh my gosh, something happened, and then like years of preparation and training for like a 48-hour event, and then like prepare.
Exercise, practice.
Yeah.